Welcome to Coach SG and Friends, where we discuss topics that help you have a better relationship with yourself and others. I am Coach SG, otherwise known as your joyful friend. I'm a relationship coach and life mentor, an entrepreneur and speaker. I'm based out of Los Angeles, but originally from Brooklyn, New York. I love great music, deep conversations, and inspiring people to live their best emotional lives and create their most amazing love story. Let me introduce you to my two friends, Janessa Rose and Lisa Miranda. Janessa is the CEO of Motivational Monsters, a nonprofit that helps people activate mental health and emotional well-being through creative arts. She is the author of How to Stop Being an Effing Bum. BUM stands for Broken Urban Mentality. She's been dubbed the Tony Robbins / Cardi B of motivational speakers, and she calls herself the Galactic Goddess. Lisa Miranda is an actor and creative director. She's also dabbling in producing. She is based in Miami, New York, and Paris. She is a world traveler who speaks several languages, who loves life, good people, and good conversation. So we want to welcome you to our podcast. Let's get started. All right, welcome back, ladies. We are here. I'm so glad to have you guys all back. We are talking about, and let me tell you why we're talking about how the heck do you love yourself. It's because, you know, all the messages tell us that we can't truly find love or maintain love if we don't love ourselves. So we just want to unpack, what does it mean to love yourself? So how the heck do you love yourself?
First and foremost, you have to know who you are and what you love about you and what you don't love about you. It has a lot to do with our belief systems, our culture, our environments, what is acceptable and normal to us. Sometimes a lot of our belief systems are toxic and they're not loving ourselves, but we're so used to them being part of our culture and just the way that we handle things. So it takes some inner work, y'all. For those who watch us, y'all know we always bring it to the inner self, right? It's always back to self. So loving self is like really being brutally honest and growing and giving yourself some time to learn the aspects of yourself that you already are comfortable with and give yourself a chance to grow and see yourself in different aspects.
What you said about knowing yourself first, I think for me, learning to love myself, I couldn't know myself fully because I was still going through the process of sorting me out, but I got more curious about me. And I think that changed. That was what was really important, because I'm still trying to figure out, you know, what is that, like, who am, like, what does that really mean for me? But what I am is more interested in looking at me and listening to me and being quiet and still and in letting things go. And even this word soothing, right? Soothing myself. This is new. This, instead of beating up on myself or pressuring myself or creating deadlines that don't serve me. I've put that in the back burner, and I've just been like, it's all right, Lisa, chill out. Forgiveness, forgiving myself and acknowledging progress. I think those are ways where loving yourself becomes something more understandable. And, you know, it's something you can swallow because I know for me, it wasn't like self-love wasn't something I had seen growing up or something that I had been exposed to, and it wasn't talked about. I didn't know what the hell that meant. It just sounded like something that goes under self-help, self-love. So, you know, I don't know this. I don't know these jargons. But now I'm like, okay, let it go, relax, forgive, you know, change the deadlines, be easy, pleasure. That one's a big one. I'll say just this one more thing. I used to feel like when I got things done that, like, if I had 10 things on my to-do list for today and I finished all, like, great, I could get a head start on tomorrow's. And I never just really stopped and enjoyed my life. Right. And that's a terrible way to live, because what are you rushing for? What are you pushing for if it's not to just stop and just take care of yourself and heal and feel good? So yeah.
I love that. And I'm similar in a way that I just felt like I didn't understand what self-love was. I felt like it was always a reaction to something bad that I did. I wasn't taking care of myself in some way. And then somebody would be like, don't you love yourself enough? But I didn't understand what that meant. I thought that was like, nice clothes and doing my hair and my mani pedis and that's what I thought self-love was. And the other thing is the first time I felt love, it was like love from my mother or love from my family. It was an outward love. So I didn't know how to bring that back into myself. And nobody was talking about loving themselves and how do you make healthy boundaries and have a high regard for yourself. I think all of it was like a physical thing, not an emotional thing. So now I completely understand how to love myself, but I only knew it when, like, I had this incident with the ex-husband where we had broken up for a little bit, and he was with this other girl, and I went over to the house and I was knocking on the door because I was like, he ain't gonna be in there with her. And I was knocking on the door, and I was just knocking because I was like, they ain't gonna have a date while I'm out here. And so I'm knocking on the door. We were in I think Far Rockaway or something, and they didn't open the door. So I went over to the side and I was just waiting and waiting. And when he came out with the girl, the way the girl looked at me was like, sis, like, he ain't worth it. Like this is what we doing. And I remember I just felt like this deep shame and like, but then I knew I need to love myself more, but I wasn't practicing understanding what that looked like on a day-to-day basis. So I don't know why I shared that story.
No. That sounded like a really good story. I thought it was gonna be yeah, I thought it was gonna go a whole different direction. I was about to start playing some Mr. Biggs.
I was like,
because I think in relationships is where that lack of self-love seems to come up, it's more present. Like if you're just with yourself all the time, it doesn't really come up as much. It's when you really want somebody to do something for you, or you want them to respond to you in a way, that's where maybe the standards that you set for yourself, you're going below those standards, and now you're starting to question whether you love yourself or not. So tell me what self-love is not.
Oh, well, here we go. Everybody get your paper and pads out because I got a list. Starting with my actions. Starting with all my old beliefs and actions. No, I'm grateful that you shared that story because it reminds me of how we speak so much poison to ourselves. Like you said, oh, he's not going to be in there with no girl while I'm out here, right? Think about the root of that thought process. What are we saying to ourselves, right? Because self-love is not poor self-talk, right? And we are super hard on ourselves a lot in relationships. And like I said, it has a lot to do with our environments and our cultures. In particularly in urban environments, right? Like I'm a Puerto Rican chick and I was born and raised and hung out predominantly around African Americans and Puerto Ricans. One of the main things is I ain't gonna be played. I'm not a punk or I'm not those things. So I need to be tough. I'm gonna kick somebody's ass. I'm gonna show them what I'm gonna act out. I'm gonna show them crazy. And this is all self-sabotaging behavior. Ooh, the earring came off. Y'all know it was true. I was already ready to fight. But we talk to ourselves and we start telling ourselves this over and over. So now we're already embedded in this idea of I'm willing to totally act erratic, crazy, disrespect other people, which is ultimately not good for myself. This is what self-love isn't. It isn't telling you like, yeah, I'm gonna disrespect him. Yeah, I want him to be what I need him to be for me. And his personal happiness or her personal happiness is not important because I'm out here and I need to be comfortable with the circumstance. I'm not gonna, self-love isn't, I don't care. So what, he cheated on me or he was with homegirl. So I'm gonna disrespect him, disrespect her. And then after that, I'm gonna go date some other body that I don't even know and share myself with them just so that way I can feel better about the circumstance because this made me feel worthless. Because what happens is we start putting ourselves in compromising positions with unworthy connections because we have believed the self-talk of, no, you're going to show them. Well, who's watching? Who knows? How does this affect them? How is it beneficial for us to hurt them? How does that benefit us? This is all part of the non-self-love pattern. It's a toxic self-sabotaging pattern. Because
I thank you for sharing that. I do want to clarify. I don't know why I think it's important, but I want to clarify we weren't married yet. We had broken up, and we had some issues, and then he was dating somebody else, because that's what it was. And then now we were getting back together. Something happened. I don't remember exactly, but we weren't married yet. So I still married him after that. But I think the thing I was saying is that self-love seems to be in a reaction to other people, and it has nothing to do with anyone else. It really has all to do with ourselves. But
I love what you said about self-sabotaging, because that is something I think I see all the time, and I've done a lot in the name of revenge, making sure someone else knows. Right. And the judgment of self, the judgment of the other person, suffering to make other people suffer. That was a big one, right? I have to make you feel so terrible, and at the expense of my peace and happiness, just so that, I could stick it to you.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a big
one for me too, sis. That's a big one.
I could pour out some alcohol for all the years wasted on that. Settling. That's something that I think is that's very new to me, because I think when you don't really love yourself, you take whatever appears to come, appears, because you don't necessarily believe or trust that you can have all the things you really want. And it doesn't have to be like a big ordeal, but it's like, sometimes I think we desire a lot more, but we accept what shows up originally, or because we think this is good enough for me. Who the hell am I to want? You know what I'm saying? To want more, or to desire more, or to have more, because of where we live, or the people around us, or fear. And I think a lot of fear sometimes stops us from living the life that we really want, that we deserve, that we can have.
What I want to make sure of is that we know what it feels like to not love ourselves. What does it feel like to love yourself, and what does that look like kind of every day? What is your daily routine or whatever? It doesn't necessarily have to be a set of daily routines as much as it's about I could look at that situation now and look back and say, I would never do that now. It wasn't that I didn't love myself then. It was more that I didn't know how to behave when people didn't do what I wanted them to do. I felt like I had to force them. So it wasn't really about self-love as much as it was about I needed them to show me love for me to feel validated. So I was getting it from the outside. I wasn't getting it from an internal place. And, when just Janessa was saying about growing up in an urban community, I just feel like in my community, there weren't all these women loving on themselves with these high standards. And, there was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of, violence. There was just a lot that they were putting up with that I was like, yeah, I don't want none of that. But how do you know what's different if you haven't seen different?
It's a lot of work. For me personally, I've always been very confident, and everybody always looked at me as if I had this grand love for myself. And in a sense, I did. I always was confident. But it wasn't until I started to realize that I was hurting myself. When I would become ashamed at my own behaviors, like you said, like I felt ashamed when I was arguing, with a guy. I started to become ashamed of certain things. Like, why am I constantly allowing certain treatment? And then when I did like the homework on it, and I'd go deep enough into the inner work, I'd say, well, obviously I dated this guy because, we hung out, we smoked pot together. We were from the same block. We were in the same gang all our lives. His parents were abusive. My parents were abusive. We trauma bonded. So as I started to do work on myself and started to get real brutally honest, I started to realize the level of normality to me was extremely low and toxic and based in fear, Lisa. right? And so this is when I started saying, oh, well, I couldn't love myself. I couldn't possibly love myself because I'm not learning from a love program. There's no love in this program. The love is in falsities, right? The love is in, oh, touch my body, crave me because I'm popular and confident and sexy. That's love. Like, that's not love either. So I started to really undo these things and get really deep. My daily work was honesty, going through letting things go. I was shedding layers of me and becoming really honest. I had become little by little exposed to more loving things. And as when I started to get exposed, that's when the contrast showed up, like, oh, well, it doesn't feel like this when I'm in that dynamic, so then it started to show. And then little by little, I have these 2 tactics I'm going to share with you guys that I did that started to bring in more self-love. First and foremost was I started to date myself. I'm going to protect me by setting myself boundaries that are better and higher, and they should operate with better results. So I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to buy myself whatever the hell I want. I'm going to eat really good. I'm going to take myself out to these really dope, exclusive restaurants, and I'm going to dress up fierce as when I want to. Right? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this all the time. I'm going to talk to myself. I'm going to tell myself how beautiful I am, how loving I am, how good I feel when I'm loving. I'm going to remind myself of this because then when I'm in the space to attract something to me, if it's not looking like the way I date myself, how the hell am I supposed to date you? The second thing, which is most recent, is I started writing letters to my future partner. For me, I write to this future husband every day, something. And I'm telling him where I am at the moment and how much I love him and how grateful I am for him and how grateful he is for the people that hurt me. And I have this conversing or this conversation with this future husband daily. And in my mind, I go into this space of he's aware, he's reading the letter as I'm writing, and he's fulfilled with this role, and I'm sort of manifesting him. And the more I do that, the less and less I'm willing to receive certain things that are just not in alignment with what the self-love looks like as I'm creating it more and more for myself. Those are my 2 newest ways I'm implicating self-love.
So what were they? Date yourself
and then start writing love letters to the ideal partner as if it's already there.
I love that. I just want to watch that movie.
What?
That's what that felt like.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, it felt like something I'd see in a movie.
You might need to play Jadessa. I could direct.
So I want to make sure that because I think we've kind of gone all over the place, but I want to so self-love is not, obviously it's not, I guess I want to share that it's not narcissism. It's not like so thinking so much about yourself that you don't have any regard for anyone else. It's really about just knowing that you are the one that's most important, and no one else is going to take care of you like you. So you have to be responsible for you. It doesn't mean having this really big ego, thinking you're better than everybody and you're above everybody. It really is about knowing that you're important and whatever room you come in, whatever relationship you go to, whatever job you go to, whatever you're engaged in, you're just as important and valued as anyone else. And your behavior doesn't determine whether you have value or not. Absolutely. It isn't perfectionism either. It isn't like where you're not allowed to make mistakes. You're not allowed to go off on people. You're not allowed to do things and now you're not lovable. It just means that you love yourself regardless, and you're going to accept, everything about yourself. And if you want to get better, great, that's great, but it's not based on what anybody else thinks of us. And then, self-love really is about having a high regard for ourselves, our needs, our boundaries, and accepting who we are. But I think, we are really clear about like when we're not loving ourselves. Like we know what the behavior looks like when we're not loving ourselves. I think the hard part is, what are the daily habits we need to do? So
those 2 things were primarily intertwined with relationships, because a big part of my belief system, and I should have mentioned this, stemmed from I'm lovable when I'm being loved by others, right? And that's not true. I'm lovable either way, right? And so what I did in those circumstances, because I was battling with feeling worthy without outside of relationship. So when I started to date myself, so that way I can attract the ideal connection, since relationships are obviously important to us. They're part of our growth. We have to rub up against each other in order for us to have contrast. It's just what it is. So dating myself, treating myself the way I want others to treat me, the way I expect it. And that's what I had to do for myself. It was hard at first. I remember not even being able to go out to eat dinner by myself, being embarrassed.
Right.
I think it's important. I love what Janessa said about taking yourself out to dates. I think doing that even when you are in a relationship, because I notice when I get out of a relationship, sometimes I don't even know who I am anymore. Or and a lot of basic little things I forgot, like, what do I enjoy? Because it's no longer we, it's now I. And I'm like, what does that mean? What are the things, I do something that is called an artist date, where I try to go out once a week for inspiration and to just be with myself and all that. But I think it's so much more powerful when it's something in addition to your passions, but just something where you can just honor yourself and know that that you give yourself the time. And it doesn't mean going out something specific, just putting time aside to be with yourself and to reconnect, in whatever form you do that. Validation is another big one. Validating yourself, learning, putting the time. I used to think a lot of this stuff, writing or listening to something, it takes a lot of time. And what does this actually do, right? Because it wasn't something tangible, but the tangible things come from the way you feel, and the way you feel comes from the habits that you take part in. So that's a big one. And you validate yourself, you love yourself by paying more attention to yourself and honoring yourself. I love how Sherelle said a high regard for the self. But I think that comes with just being easy.
Sure that we're given tools. So Janessa mentioned about writing love letters to her future guy, and you an artist day. With my clients, I have them do affirmations. I also believe in focusing on the things that make you feel really good, because you have to be able to give yourself pleasure, physically and other ways, in order to communicate what your needs are. If you are not catering to yourself and you're expecting someone else to cater to you, how can you communicate what you need if you're not used to doing it for yourself? The other thing too is I find that the other way that I love myself is by listening to myself. I never used to listen to myself before. As a kid, I was, you're made to be seen and not heard. So your feelings didn't matter. Your presence didn't matter. What you needed didn't matter. The parents mattered. So I wasn't used to what do I want to do today? What would I like to eat? I wasn't used to listening to myself. I was used to getting advice from outside. I was used to, coordinating with other people what I should do. And now, and it still takes me some time. Sometimes I'm just like, is that something I should do because of my experience? I don't know, but now I just fuck it. Whatever I want, I'm going to do. And the more that I do that, I'm able to discern what's right for me. But I wasn't used to doing that because I was used to looking for agreement. If you agreed with me, then I was okay. Because that's how I was brought up as a kid, that, if you don't behave, I'm not nice to you, but when you behave, I'm nice to you. So I was used to performing for everybody.
Yeah.
My joyful friends, that's our show. Thank you for listening. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and leave a review. Share this episode with someone you think would get some value out of it. We look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Bye-bye now.